Hello and welcome to Wasted Plotential, the show where we discuss the wasted potential of our favourite plotlines. Final Crisis was a gigantic mess that was really difficult to follow even when collected or adapted into an easy to understand format. I'm not sure it would be possible for me to fix it short of streamlining and simplifying the plot, so I'm not here to do that. Instead, I'm here to discuss a particular element of the story and just how bafflingly it was implemented. Final Crisis is the story of the despot Darkseid's final victory over the Earth. He obtains the anti-life equation, which is basically a mathematical formula that proves the futility of life and free will, and once accepted by the subconscious, makes a person completely subservient to Darkseid. Through various means, from biological to technological, Darkseid spreads the equation across the Earth, converting almost the entire population within a month. One of Darkseid's most prominent forces is the female Furies, a group of women trained by Granny Goodness to serve as Darkseid's fanatical enforcers. They're probably most notable for how Big Barda betrayed the group and joined Earth's heroes against Darkseid. In Final Crisis, we're introduced to a new team of Furies that hunt down those who resist Darkseid. This group consists of 4 anti-life infected heroines and villainesses. Admittedly, the idea of 4 brainwashed individuals serving a grey-skinned, blue armour-clad despot is a little similar to Apocalypse and his 4 horsemen from X-Men, with 3 of them riding mounts in case you missed the illusion. But it does mix that with the S&M flavour of the Hounds, also from X-Men, so it's actually super original, guys. The group is led by Wonder Woman, the most prominent and possibly most powerful female hero on the planet. There's also Giganta, whose size-changing powers are a good fit for one weeding out the resistance. And then we have the other two, Catwoman and Batwoman. Now, I'm not entirely sure what they were going for here. Sure, Selina is easily the most prominent woman in the Batman mythos aside from maybe Barbara and Martha, but Kate had only been around for like 2 years by this point, 1 in universe, and 2 characters who just use weapons and have no powers, really? Catwoman uses a whip, so Diana can do anything she can with her lasso and more, and Batwoman uses dual pistols which anyone can use. Give Diana the guns and Selina and Kate may as well not even be here. And this is what I wish to fix. The choices seem really random both in-universe and out. The only reason I can think of as to why DC chose them is that Selina is well known and they wanted to give Kate a push by giving her a big role in this major event, but why she couldn't just be one of the remaining uninfected heroes, maybe helping Renee in the Revelations tie-in, I've got no idea. In-universe, I guess they just happened to be in the room when Granny pitched a new team concept to boss Darkseid. So let's give this new roster a little more meaning. For my take, I have 2 ideas, one building on top of the other. So let's start with the smaller one. When I first started thinking about why Kate and Selina were here, my first thought was that they're supposed to represent the entire Bat family, while Diana represents herself and the Amazons. This is probably not the idea since they lack a Superman analogue, but that really is what they should have done. For the first version, we're going to keep the number at 4, because the whole 4 Horsemen of Planet Apocalypse theme is definitely appropriate, given the apocalyptic tone of the story. But the members in our version are a symbol. Their purpose is to hunt down insurgents, so having the team members be chosen to best drain all sense of hope out of Darkseid's enemies makes way more sense than, say, throwing Catwoman in because you procrastinated too long and were coming up on a deadline. So, how do you best drain hope from the populace of the DC universe? With a corruption of the Trinity. The Trinity of Batman, Superman and Wonder Woman is not just a snazzy marketing gimmick. The 3 as a group within the Justice League is a canonical concept, with the 3 sometimes having secret meetings without the rest of the team because they're the 3 most famous and prominent heroes in the setting. People know about the 3's position at the top of the pecking order, so let's use that. Of course, we can't use Bruce and Clark because they're male, but Diana is fair game. We'll keep her around and use the other 2's distaff counterparts as stand-ins. For Batman, you could use Kate or Selina, but Kate is really too new for that, and Selina isn't instantly recognisable as part of the Bat family. I think the better choice would be the most famous of Batman's female allies. Barbara Gordon, formerly Batgirl, currently Oracle. She'd be dressed in her old costume and given cybernetic augmentations in her spine that allow her to walk again, as well as in her head that allow her to hack technology with her mind, making her a dark take on both of her identities at the same time. After the story, she would choose to have the augments removed, to go back to being wheelchair bound rather than keeping any reminder of her actions as Darkseid's thrall, no matter how potentially useful. As for the Superman equivalent, well, the obvious choice would be Supergirl, but I think there's actually a better option here. Power Girl. PG is Kara's counterpart from Earth 2, making her about 20 years older than the Earth 1 version and thus more experienced, and presumably more powerful too. The original reason this Kara gave up the Supergirl identity and didn't become Superwoman or something similar is that she didn't want to be seen as just a discount Superman, a stand-in for when the real deal isn't around. It's why she doesn't wear the S-shield or have a logo on her chest at all. So let's imagine that Power Girl is taken over by the anti-life equation and selected to be the Fury who represents Superman. Her costume is altered to be more like Clark's, including a nice big S-shield on her chest, taking away her entire sense of individuality and identity. She is now nothing more than a stand-in for Superman, the very image she always fought to escape, and she willingly accepts this as her purpose in service to Darkseid. As for the fourth member of this quartet, let's bring in Big Barda, herself a former Fury. I don't know why a hero whose entire backstory ties back to Darkseid gets only a brief cameo in this story after the conflict has already been resolved, but let's not do that. Instead, Barda is included with the Dark Trinity to represent the inevitability of anti-life. Like Barda, you can run, you can hide, but in the end, you will submit to Darkseid. And if you want to add more to the Four Horsemen idea, they each get a mount and can be occasionally referred to with those names. The Amazon Warrior is War, the last daughter of dead Krypton is Death, the woman whose legs were malnourished is Famine, and the Fury once afflicted with goodness is Pestilence. Then there's the part where the four fight a large group of heroes in issue 6. This is where I'd give Kate a big moment, helping take down Cyborg Barbara, possibly with other members of the Bat family that continue to resist. Being a more experienced, more powerful Kara, Power Girl would make for a far better opponent for her counterpart than the possessed Mary Marvel, where Supergirl feels like she was only chosen to fight her because she has kinda similar powers. Instead, we get the much more recent Supergirl having to fight a stronger, more experienced version of herself, whose scruples over murder have been released by Anti-Life. Obviously, this is a lot more interesting than if the Karas were switched and the weaker one was the villain. Barda could fight her husband, Mr. Miracle, for whom she originally abandoned the Furies, as well as his protege. And Diana can fight pretty much anyone because everyone already knows her, but bringing in one or both of the Wonder Girls would be nice. I think this makes for a much stronger team concept than just whoever happened to be in the office that day. But what about my second concept? Well, the other concept builds on the Dark Trinity idea and goes for a Dark Justice League. You take other Leaguers and use their female counterparts in the team. I admit it's kinda like Amikomi, but I swear I didn't realise that until after the fact. The Flash would have Jesse Quick, Green Lantern gets Star Sapphire or a resurrected Jade, Black Canary is herself, Green Arrow has basically any female archer. Admittedly, you might have a few too many Furies this way, and the team we do have gets barely any screen time as it is, so limiting it to 4 or 5 is probably best. But one last change I would make for the story before we wrap up is that I would give the Furies an entire tie-in one-shot to themselves, regardless of what the team's membership is. Final Crisis, for the final chapter of the Crisis trilogy and a major event comic in general, has weirdly few tie-ins. There were a couple of tie-in miniseries and like 3 one-shots, but not many normal comics had tie-ins the way an event like Blackest Night did. You'd think there'd have been tons of tie-in issues showcasing the heroes and villains frantically fighting off their mind-controlled loved ones while trying to avoid ending up like them. Sure, it might have gotten a bit repetitive to have so many issues with the same premise, but it works out well enough in Blackest Night, and we really don't know the status of a lot of characters during the story. Bear in mind that we don't know where either of the first 2 Robins or the second Wonder Girl are during the event, and we only learned about the third Robin situation after the fact. A tie-in or 2 would have really helped here, especially with regards to the Furies. Wonder Woman is attacked by Mary Marvel and infected with a virus that will help spread anti-life with her as a carrier, and the next we see of her is when the Flashes arrive a month into the future and Diana's already leading the Furies. Giganta doesn't even appear in the story before this point, and all we get for Selena and Kate is that they were taken very early, going off their appearance in Revelations. We know so little about the process of how these 4 were chosen and trained up as the new Furies. In my version of the event, they would be the focus of the tie-in named Final Crisis Submit, with a nice big picture of Diana on the cover holding her lasso as a fun little gag while the other Fury candidates stand behind her. The issue would focus on them fighting the infected before being overrun and brought to a special chamber where they're hooked up to machines similar to the ones Darkseid's minions try to break Batman with. These devices would flash images into the Four's minds of their loved ones battling and losing to the equation. Diana sees the Wonder Girls, Donna Troy and Cassie Sandsmark, the the former of whom is a confirmed Justifier. Maybe Themyscira is brought back to Earth before the event so she can witness the fall of her Amazon sisters. Barbara sees the entire GCPD, including her father, being taken over, as well as any members of the Bat family we're not going to see again in the story, like her predecessor and successor as Batgirl, Bette Kane, and Cassandra Cain. Kara sees her employees at her company and her friends from Justice League International, as well as the brief moment in Revelations when Supergirl and the others at Superman's Fortress are taken over, confirming in her mind that Kara Zor-El is not immune to anti-life. And Barda simply sees her husband losing in battle with Darkseid's forces, maybe being told that his life will be spared if she submits. Once the four give in, we close on the same shot as the cover, but with the four now as Furies and Diana commanding the reader to submit to Darkseid. The entire point of having heroes be brainwashed and given evil makeovers, especially with fetishy S&M gear, is to make the viewer feel uneasy, horrified by what the villain is capable of. It showcases their dominance and the failure of the heroic spirit. But you need to use characters that mean something. S&M-ish characters like Catwoman and new characters like Batwoman just don't leave that kind of impact, and a villain like Giganta arguably doesn't either. And on top of that, for Bruce and Clark to get multiple issues each, dedicated to explaining their absence for most of the story while Diana gets nothing, it just feels kinda wrong, you know? On a more positive note that's somewhat related to this subject, I've recently discovered something that might help make a certain other DC storyline a little less shit. It's this little bit of banter from Injustice 2.
What primitive weapon is that?
The anti-life equation.
Finally, your true nature is revealed.
It's probably just her being cute, but maybe this indicates the direction they're planning to go in the next game. Or maybe I'm reading too much into things. But honestly, this isn't a bad explanation for why she's such a cunt. If you liked this video, why not subscribe and support me on Patreon like these fine people here? If not, then make sure to share it with your enemies so they too can submit to anti-life.